Okay. Speed's the reason for the stop. 78 and a 65.
Understood. I didn't realize I was pushing it.
License or registration. Keep your hands where I can see them.
Of course. Wallet's in my jacket. Okay if I reach?
Go ahead.
Long night at the hospital.
Dr. Rahman, St. Agnes Medical.
Yes.
You work oncology?
Pediatric. My daughter, she's 7.
The patrol car's lights cut through the rain like a blade. Red, blue, red again. The doctor eased his sedan onto the shoulder, heart steady, hands visible. Habits learned from years in emergency rooms and courtrooms alike. He didn't know that the officer approaching his window carried a secret debt. He didn't know the stop was logged at 11:43 p.m. Body cam rolling, dispatch recording every breath. And he didn't know that tonight would force a reckoning no badge could outrun. Day with this story not for shock, but for understanding. For the quiet choices made under pressure, and the systems that shape them. Listen closely, because what happens next isn't about heroes or villains. It's about accountability and the fragile line between power and gratitude. Rain didn't fall so much as it hung in the air, suspended in the headlights like dust in a church. The highway was almost empty, one of those late stretches where the world feels reduced to asphalt, sodium lights, and the steady hiss of tires cutting water. Officer Daniel Mercer sat in the left lane of his cruiser, hands light on the wheel, eyes trained the way the academy taught him to train them, not on one car, but on patterns, speed, drift, hesitation. A vehicle that holds too steady can be as suspicious as one that swerves. His dash clock glowed 11:42 p.m. The radio murmured with low-level calls, a domestic here, a noise complaint there, routine. The kind of routine that makes a man believe he understands the shape of the night. Then the sedan passed him. Not fast, not reckless. Just fast enough to trigger the muscle memory that lived in his bones. He glanced down. He didn't need the radar to know it was over, but he had it anyway, an honest number, a neutral witness. 78 in a 65. His thumb hit the overheads. Red and blue flooded the rain, strobes reflecting off slick pavement, and road signs like a warning from the sky. The sedan slowed, signaled, and pulled over with a calm that Mercer noticed immediately. No sudden braking. No darting to the shoulder. No last-second indecision. Whoever was driving had done this before or had been taught how to. Mercer radioed it in, voice clipped and clean. Dispatch, Lincoln 12. Traffic stop. Westbound I-94 at mile marker 142. Silver sedan. Plate 83 Victor. He read it off, careful, and the dispatcher repeated it back. The sound of keys tapping in the background like faint percussion. He clicked his body camera on. A small beep. A tiny light. Policy required it. So did common sense. People behaved differently when they knew the moment was being preserved. Mercer stepped out into the wet cold, the kind that crept through fabric. His boots hit the shoulder with a muted splash. The world smelled like rain and exhaust. He adjusted his duty belt without thinking, holster, cuffs, radio, the weight of the tools that made him feel prepared and accused at the same time. The training came back as he walked. Approach from the driver's side unless conditions dictate otherwise. Watch hands, watch shoulders, watch the angle of the head. The most dangerous moment in a patrol officer's night was always the first 30 seconds at a window. That was the line between routine and headline. He angled his flashlight, not aggressive, just firm. The beam cut through the sedan's rear window. There were no passengers he could see. No frantic movement, no reaching. The driver's hands were already on the steering wheel at 10 and 2, pale knuckles against dark leather. When Mercer drew close enough to see inside, he caught the driver's face in brief flashes. A man in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, clean-shaven, eyes forward, expression steady in a way that felt practiced. Not arrogant, not scared. Something else controlled, like a surgeon about to make a first incision. Mercer stopped at the pillar and leaned in just enough to be heard over the rain. His voice stayed professional, the way the department wanted it on camera. Evening, sir. I'm Officer Mercer with the Highway Patrol. Reason for the stop is your speed. I clocked you at 78 in a 65. The driver blinked once, slow, as if letting the words land without reacting to them. Yes, officer, he said. His tone wasn't defensive. It wasn't overly polite either. It was measured. I understand. Mercer waited half a beat, scanning hands, scanning the interior, scanning the small details that told you who someone might be. A hospital badge clip hung near the center console. A folded paper map. A coffee cup in the holder that looked untouched. Can I see your driver's license, registration, proof of insurance? The driver moved exactly the way Mercer preferred, one hand leaving the wheel, announcing itself before it traveled. My wallet's in my jacket pocket, the man said quietly. Is it okay if I reach for it? That one line permission asked. Not assumed hit Mercer like a strange kind of relief. It was what you wished every stop sounded like. It was what training videos looked like when nobody died. "Go ahead," Mercer said. The driver reached slowly, produced a wallet, slid his license out between two fingers and offered it. His other hand stayed visible. Mercer took the card and glanced down. Dr. Amir Rahman. The name didn't mean anything yet, not in the way it was about to. "Where you headed tonight, Dr. Rahman?" Mercer asked, more routine than suspicion. Questions created a baseline. People who lied often overcompensated. "Home," Rahman said. "St. Clair." "I'm coming from the hospital." "What hospital?" "St. Agnes Medical Center." Mercer's flashlight beam drifted, catching the badge clip again, and something in Mercer's mind noted the small procedure detail. Medical staff often did late shifts, often drove tired, sometimes drove fast without realizing. But tired didn't erase the number on the radar. It didn't erase the duty to enforce. "Long shift?" Mercer asked. Rahman's mouth tightened, not annoyed, just exhausted. "Long week." Mercer nodded slightly, stepped back, and returned to his cruiser with the documents. The rain sounded louder inside, drumming the roof like impatient fingers. He entered the plate, then the license, then waited. Dispatch came back, with the calm rhythm of a system doing what it was built to do. Lincoln 12, plate returns registered to Amir Rahman, address St. Clair. Valid. No wants, no warrants. Clean. Mercer exhaled through his nose. This was the part of the night where it usually ended. A citation if he wanted to make a point, a warning if he believed the lesson would stick. Discretion. That word lived in every policy manual and every lawsuit. He pulled up the driver's information on the in-car computer, eyes flicking over the screen. His cursor hovered over the notes field, departmental flags sometimes. Sat there, prior stops, officer safety alerts, restraining orders. There was nothing. He was about to start printing a warning when the name surfaced again, not on the screen but in memory. It came like a flicker of hospital fluorescent lights, and the smell of antiseptic. It came like a child's laugh that didn't belong in a cancer ward. Mercer froze, hands suspended over the keyboard, because he had seen Dr. Rahman before, not in a traffic stop database, on a consent form, on a white coat stitched with blue thread, in a room where his daughter had been small enough to fit inside the circle of his arms, her skin too warm with fever, her hair already falling out in soft, cruel clumps onto the pillow. Mercer swallowed hard. The cruiser felt suddenly too tight, like the air had thickened. He looked back through the rain-streaked windshield at the sedan waiting. On the shoulder, its brake lights glowing red like a held breath. He checked the timestamp on the body cam feed indicator. 11:43 p.m. Policy. Procedure. Discretion. Debt. Mercer's fingers finally moved, not to print the warning, to adjust his radio volume. Just a notch, as if he needed to hear the world more clearly. And then the dispatcher's voice cut through again, sharper this time. Not routine. Lincoln 12, be advised. Sergeant Hollis is in the area. He's monitoring traffic stops tonight. Mercer's jaw tightened. Hollis wasn't just a supervisor. He was the kind of supervisor who loved clean numbers. Citations issued, stops made, productivity measured in neat columns. The kind of man who said discretion like it was a privilege you earned by never making mistakes. Mercer stared at the sedan. He knew what he was supposed to do, but he also knew what that name meant. And somewhere on the shoulder of a wet highway, under the surveillance of a camera and the invisible eyes of a supervisor, a routine stop began to tilt slowly, dangerously into something else. The memory doesn't arrive gently. It never does. It comes with the smell first bleach, an antiseptic layered so thick they feel edible. It comes with the hum of fluorescent lights that never turn off, day or night, because illness doesn't respect sleep. And it comes with the sound Mercer learned to fear most, the soft, dry cough of a child who is trying not to scare her parent. St. Agnes Pediatric Oncology, 4th floor. 2 years earlier, Mercer had stood in that hallway wearing the same posture he used on that street, shoulders squared, jaw set, pretending control could be summoned by force alone. His uniform had felt obscene there, too loud, too confident for a place built around fragility. Other parents stared at the badge with something between respect and resentment. Authority meant nothing in a ward where cancer decided everything. His daughter Lily was 7, or she had been, before time started measuring itself in blood counts and infusion cycles instead of birthdays. She sat on the hospital bed swinging her legs, too thin, her head already smooth, beneath a knitted cap she refused to take off because it made her feel normal. The 4-pump clicked steadily. Beside her, a mechanical heartbeat. When Dr. Rahman walked in, Mercer hadn't noticed him at first. Doctors came and went in white coats and soft shoes, all of them careful with their words, all of them trained to never promise outcomes. But Rahman moved differently. He didn't hover at the door. He didn't talk to the chart before talking to the child. He knelt, eye level. Same plane, no power above, no pity below. "Hey, Lily," he'd said, smiling like it was an ordinary day. "I hear you're the bravest patient on this floor." She'd rolled her eyes. "That's what everyone says." Rahman had chuckled, not offended. Then it must be true. Mercer had watched closely, the way he always did, scanning for weakness, for bullshit. For the moment someone would flinch and reveal they didn't know what they were doing, it never came. Rahman explained the diagnosis without euphemism, but without cruelty. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia, treatment protocol, percentages that felt like insults when spoken out loud. He spoke to Lily, not around her. He asked if she wanted the truth before he gave it. Consent wasn't just a form to him, it was a conversation. Over the months that followed, Mercer learned the rituals of the ward. The color-coded wristbands, the weekly tumor board meetings Rahman attended at 6:30 a.m., reviewing scans and lab values with a precision that left little room for hope, but never eliminated it. The insurance appeals Rahman wrote himself when coverage stalled, citing medical necessity, policy language, precedent. Mercer had once skimmed one of those letters by accident, stunned by how much quiet fight lived inside bureaucratic sentences. Rahman never called himself a hero. He never framed treatment as a battle Lily had to win. He talked about endurance, about showing up, about doing the next right thing even when the outcome refused to reveal itself. When Lily crashed, during her second cycle, fever spiking, blood pressure dropping, Mercer had panicked in a way no academy scenario had prepared him for. He remembered shouting Rahman's name down the hallway, his voice breaking, the badge useless against the terror clawing up his throat. Rahman had arrived already moving, already issuing orders. Broad-spectrum antibiotics, cultures drawn, ICU on standby. There was no drama in his voice, only clarity. The protocols were real, not theoretical. Mercer later learned they were written into hospital policy for a reason. Minutes mattered, and Rahman treated each one like borrowed time. Lily survived that night, not because of miracles, because of systems that worked, and a man who respected them enough to execute them flawlessly. Gratitude followed Mercer everywhere after that. Heavy, unpayable. He tried to express it once, awkwardly, in the hallway outside Lily's room. Rahman had stopped him with a small shake of the head. "You don't owe me anything," he'd said. "This is my job." But Mercer knew better. Jobs had limits. This hadn't felt like one. Now, years later, sitting in a patrol car, with rain tapping out an impatient rhythm, Mercer felt that old weight press against his chest again. The sedan idled ahead of him, its driver waiting, unaware of the memories unfolding in the dark. The debt hadn't disappeared with Lily's remission. It had just gone quiet, and tonight, it had found him. Mercer stepped out of the cruiser more slowly this time, like the ground itself had become uncertain. The rain had eased into a mist, fine enough to cling to his eyelashes, to soften the world at the edges. The sedan's brake light still burned red, unwavering. Patient. Procedure first. Always procedure. He reminded himself of the policy language almost reflexively. Discretion must be applied uniformly. Prior interactions irrelevant. Personal history irrelevant. The law didn't care about gratitude. The camera didn't either. He stopped at the driver's window again. Posture squared. Voice steady enough to pass inspection. "Rahman," he said, letting the name land. "I'm going to issue you a citation for the speed tonight." Rahman turned his head slightly, meeting Mercer's eyes for the first time. Not startled, not angry, just attentive, as if listening to a diagnosis. "I understand," he said after a beat. Mercer hesitated, barely perceptible, but the body cam would catch it. His thumb tightened on the citation pad. He could feel the eyes that weren't there yet. A supervisor reviewing footage, an internal affairs lieutenant watching for tone, for hesitation, for favoritism disguised as mercy. "Before I do," Mercer continued, "is there anything you want to add?" It was a standard line, an opening for explanation, a chance to speak. Rahman exhaled slowly. "Only that I wasn't trying to be careless," he said. "I misjudged my speed. That's on me. No excuses. No invocation of status, no mention of the hospital, the children's ward, of the long week." Mercer felt a strange tightening in his throat. This was the kind of driver the public safety videos pretended everyone could be. He began writing. The pen scratched softly against the pad, each letter a small, irrevocable decision. Illinois Vehicle Code 625 ALCS 5 11 to 601. Speeding. Recorded speed. Posted limit. Time. Location. He recited it in his head as he wrote, anchoring himself to the law like it was a rail. The radio crackled. Lincoln 12. Sergeant Hollis's voice came through, unmistakable, calm, observant. Everything routine on that stop. Mercer lifted the mic. Affirmative, Sarge. Issuing citation now. There was a pause, just long enough to mean something. Copy that, Hollis replied. Make sure everything's clean. Clean. The word carried weight. It always did. Mercer tore the citation free and handed it over. Their fingers didn't touch. Rahman took the paper, eyes scanning it briefly, the way he might review lab results, focus, unemotional. Your court date's listed at the bottom, Mercer said. Instructions are on the back. This is not an admission of guilt. Rahman nodded. Thank you for explaining. Thank you. Not for the mercy he didn't receive. For the clarity. Mercer cleared his throat. The moment stretched, awkward now, charged with something neither man named. The rain whispered against the car doors. Traffic passed in distant bursts, indifferent. Drive safely, Mercer said finally. I will, Rahman replied. Mercer stepped back, signaling the end of the stop. The sedan merged back onto the highway smoothly, taillights disappearing into the dark. Mercer stood on the shoulder a moment longer than necessary, watching the space where the car had been. The debt remained, untouched, heavy as ever. Back in the cruiser, he logged the stop, each keystroke another small piece of permanence. He knew what came next. Reviews, metrics, maybe nothing, maybe something. The camera light blinked, still recording. Mercer shut it off. In the quiet that followed, he wondered not for the first time whether justice felt different when it finally arrived, or whether it always sounded like this. Rain on metal, paperwork closing a story that wasn't really finished. The fallout didn't arrive with sirens or shouting. It came the way consequences usually do, quietly, wrapped in paperwork, delayed just long enough for denial to feel plausible. 2 days after the stop, Mercer sat in the briefing room under fluorescent lights that flattened every face into the same tired shade. The room smelled like burnt coffee and printer toner. Sergeant Hollis stood at the front, tablet in hand, posture relaxed in a way that signaled control. Couple of reminders, Hollis said, pacing slowly. Traffic enforcement numbers were light last week. Discretion's important, but consistency matters more. Body cams don't lie. Neither do auditors. Mercer didn't look up. He didn't need to. He felt the words land anyway. By Friday, the email arrived. Subject line neutral, almost polite. Notification of internal review routine. No accusation. No defense. Just process. The department's professional standards unit had flagged the stop not because of leniency, but because of hesitation. A 30-second gap between dispatch clearance and citation issuance. Long enough to raise questions, long enough to be reviewed frame by frame. Mercer watched the footage alone that night, in a small office with the blinds half closed. He saw himself pause, saw his shoulders shift, saw the moment his eyes flicked not to the ticket pad, but to the driver's face. It looked like nothing. It felt like everything. Meanwhile, Dr. Rahman returned to the rhythms of the hospital. Morning rounds at 6, charting that spilled into lunch. A resident pulling him aside to ask about a difficult case. Life moved forward the way it always did, indifferent to singular moments that lingered only for those trapped inside them. But the stop followed him too. The citation sat folded in his coat pocket for days before he finally placed it on his desk. He read it again, not to contest it, but to understand it. The statute was clear. The speed undeniable. Yet something about the exchange refused to settle, not injustice, something subtler. A feeling of having stepped briefly into a private history that should have remained irrelevant. When the hospital's compliance officer called, Rahman answered without surprise. There's a request for confirmation, she said carefully. Regarding an incident involving a state trooper. Internal review. They may contact you. I see, Rahman replied. You're not obligated to do anything, she added. But if you do, everything's on record. Rahman looked out the window at the parking structure, the steady movement of cars below, systems overlapping, rules intersecting, people caught in between. Thank you, he said. I'll cooperate. The interview was brief, procedural. A recorded call with a lieutenant he'd never met. Questions about tone, about conduct, about whether the officer had referenced any prior relationship. No, Rahman said, truthfully. He was professional. Did you feel pressured? No. Did you feel favored? Rahman paused, not long, but honestly. No, he said. I felt observed. The lieutenant thanked him and ended the call. Back at the precinct, Mercer received his preliminary findings. No misconduct. No policy violation, but a note, always the note, about emotional hesitation inconsistent with optimal officer presence. Mandatory refresher training. Bias and discretion module, 4 hours. Logged. Mercer sat in his car afterward, engine off, listening to the cooling metal tick beneath the hood. Lily's laugh echoed in his mind, not from the hospital this time, but from the backyard. Healthy, alive, chasing a ball she never should have had the chance to throw. Gratitude had never felt heavier. And somewhere between policy memos and quiet phone calls, between compliance checklists and body cam footage, both men understood the same truth without ever speaking it aloud. The system had noticed. And once a system notices, it never fully looks away. The reckoning didn't happen in a courtroom. There was no gavel, no raised voices, no verdict delivered like a final blow. It unfolded instead in a municipal conference room with beige walls and a seal mounted slightly crooked. Behind the podium, an ordinary place where systems quietly decide how much they are willing to change. The agenda item was buried halfway down the page. Traffic stop discretion review. No names, just a case number, a timestamp, and a recommendation. Mercer sat in the second row, uniform pressed, hands folded loosely in his lap. He had already completed the refresher training, 4 hours of scenarios, statistics, and carefully worded slides about implicit bias and professional distance. He'd answered the questions correctly. He always did. But the training hadn't been the hard part. The hard part was listening. A policy analyst spoke first, her voice even, almost gentle. She explained how discretion functioned in theory versus practice. How gratitude, fear, fatigue, human factors could bend enforcement in ways that eroded public trust, even when no harm was intended. She cited studies, audit findings, a neighboring state's recent consent decree. This review isn't punitive, she said. It's corrective. Corrective. Mercer had learned that word too. Across town, Rahman finished his shift and changed out of his scrubs, the hospital humming behind him like a living organism that never slept. He hadn't been asked to attend the meeting. His role was already complete. But the outcome mattered to him in a way he hadn't expected. When the department released its bulletin a week later, it was brief but specific. Updated guidance on traffic stop discretion. Mandatory documentation for pauses exceeding 30 seconds post-clearance. Enhanced supervisor review for late-night stops. Small changes. Surgical ones. Rahman read the notice online, standing at his kitchen counter, phone in hand. It felt strange seeing a private moment translated into policy language. Stranger still to recognize himself in the negative space, unnamed but present. Mercer received the same bulletin in his department inbox. He read it twice. Not out of fear, but recognition. This was the consequence, not humiliation, not redemption, but adjustment. The system learning, incrementally, from a moment that had nearly slipped by unnoticed. Their final meeting happened by chance. A month later, in a hospital corridor near the elevators, Mercer stood awkwardly, in plain clothes, Lily beside him, healthy and restless, tugging at his hand. She was there for a routine follow-up paperwork, not fear. Rahman stepped out of a patient room and stopped when he saw them. The recognition passed between the men instantly, quietly. "Dr. Rahman," Mercer said. His voice was softer now, unarmored. "I just wanted to say thank you for everything." Rahman glanced at Lily, then back at Mercer. "She looks strong," he said. "She is," Mercer replied. He hesitated, then added, "I'm glad the stop was handled the way it was." Rahman nodded once. "So am I." There was no apology. None was needed. No absolution either. They stood there for a moment longer, two men bound briefly by history, and permanently by systems larger than either of them. Then Lily tugged Mercer's hand again, impatient with adult pauses. And Mercer smiled, really smiled for the first time in weeks. As they walked away, Rahman returned to his rounds. Mercer exited into daylight. Justice, Mercer realized, didn't feel like victory. It felt like alignment, like a system nudged slightly closer to what it claimed to be. Imperfect. Human, watching itself, and somewhere between a traffic stop logged at 11:43 p.m. and a policy update issued weeks later, the line between power and gratitude had held, not because of heroism, but because the rules were allowed to matter. That was the quiet resolution. Not an ending, but a correction.